Okay, hi everyone. I'm Kathy Shields. I'm the chair of Technology and Trends Roundtable, and we are trying out something new this spring, trying to do some webinars via Google Hangout, which is a new technology for us. But hey, we're all about new technologies, so we're gonna try it, see how it goes. And we have the wonderful Beth Filar Williams from UNCG doing a presentation for us on best practices for presenting online, of which this is not one of the best practices. But she is going to go over some good things in preparation for people who might be submitting proposals for our spring webinar series, or really anyone who might be presenting online, because I know virtual conferences have become a big thing lately. So without any more intro, I'll hand it over to Beth.
Definitely. Well, I was actually going to start with welcoming everyone. I know there's people watching us through YouTube on my Google Plus site, but we have a couple people in the room here. So I was going to go ahead and let the folks in the room introduce yourself, because I might be asking you some questions while we're going through this. So I don't know who wants to go first. Anyone?
Hello.
There she is, Emily.
I hope I have a microphone on this. You can hear me? Cool. I'm Emily Mann. I'm at Coker College. What was I supposed to say?
That's fine, whatever. Just introduce yourself. And used to be at UNCG until about, what, a week ago, right?
A week ago, yeah.
And anyone else? Heather, I don't know if you have a mic if you want to say hello.
I can go.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle. I work with Beth down in the Digital Media Commons at UNCG.
Great. And then we have Heather Klein here, too. I think, Heather, you work for NC Live or the State Library or something like that. I'm not sure whether you have a mic to be able to talk. But that was thank you, guys. This is a little awkward because this is totally new software, like Kathy was just saying. So we are trying to figure this out. We actually did test this a bit, but we're doing more than just Google Hangout. We're doing Google Hangout on air. And so what that means is you were connecting the Google Hangout to my YouTube account, so it's streaming live, so somebody could just go to the YouTube page and watch it. It's not as good for the interaction, but it allows more people to join, because in a Google Hangout, you can only have up to 10 people. So right now we have 5, so we'd only be able to have a few more, and then we wouldn't be able to allow anyone else in. So this is a way to get it to stream directly to YouTube, and it'll record it there and save it, and supposedly, and then it's a little bit different than just a Google Hangout. So I was just going to mention that, and I'm going to share my screen. Well, let me actually get my PowerPoint going so that I have something to show you. Oops. Okay, hold on a second. Doing too many things at once. I need to move I have 2 monitors. Hold on a second. I got to move this over here because my PowerPoint only wants to show on my one monitor, and I need to show it on the other one. So here we go. And now I'm going to screen share. So now you all should be seeing my PowerPoint slides in the window. And like Kathy said, this is the presentation on best practices for presenting online. And just really quickly, what I'm going to be covering today, I wanted to go over the Google Hangout overview a little bit. Since we have a lot less time, I'm going to try to go a little quicker. And then some planning and practice. By the way, is it flickering for you all when you're looking at the agenda, or it looks fine? Okay. It keeps flickering the image up and down, so I didn't want to be annoying you if it was doing that. So we're going to go through some of these sorts of things, but to get us started, let's see if I can get this poll to work. I'm not sure how well it's going to work. So I have a poll for you, and if you can go to, whoa, what happened to it? It disappeared. Can you see the poll? I can see it on my screen, but I'm not sure whether you can. No, you can't. That's so strange. Okay, there it is. There it went. Let's do this again. You should be able to see a poll that says, have you ever used Google Hangouts on air? But it keeps going away, and this is why we aren't using Google Hangouts on air. Can you see the poll? Yeah, it goes in and out. Try going to this website and see if you can get it to work. Every time you're about to say yes, it goes away. This is really weird. So this is the first time I've actually been the presenter for something like this, Google Hangouts on Air. So I was going to try to use Poll Everywhere, because Poll Everywhere is a tool that it's free for up to 40 participants, and you can embed it in your PowerPoint slides. And what I'm doing is screen sharing and showing my PowerPoint slides with these embedded in there. And I've done this a ton at actual face-to-face workshops and presentations, but I've never tried it before here in Google Hangouts. So I wasn't sure exactly how it would work, but somebody did answer. So at some point somebody saw the slide. I've stuck the URL in the window, so I'm just going to move on since it doesn't seem to be working that well. But I was basically asking you if you've ever used Google Hangouts on air, or just as a participant, a presenter, or just Google Hangouts in general. Because you can just use Google Hangouts in general without using the on-air part. So one person said they did as a participant. So basically, Google Hangouts overview, I'll just move right into that. And that Google Hangouts is really a cool tool for just for hanging out with friends, for having a meeting or things like that. It's good for just small groups, like up to 10 people. This is just Google Hangouts. You can click on people's names and say start a hangout if you're in Gmail. It only allows up to 10, but the nice thing is it's webcam. So if you want to get a group of people together and do a meeting or kind of do a small group presentation, it is a really good tool for that. I've used it for a lot of meetings and things like that. The Hangouts on Air, like I said, links to a YouTube account. The problem is there's a 2-minute delay. So what I'm saying right now for the people that are on air watching in YouTube, it's 2 minutes later. So just so you know that. It makes it a little harder for doing any sort of interaction, like me asking you a question, because it's going to be delayed for those that are in the room, for those that are watching on air. You do have to set up your Google Plus account to use it, but I know a lot of people aren't as thrilled with Google Plus, but that's all you do is just set it up and click on the YouTube and get it all linked up, and it would be that easy. But then actually running the event, as you can tell this morning, it's still clunky. It's a pretty new thing, and I think it's just, we need to play around with it more, which is with a lot of technology, and figure out the ins and outs, figure out how you can get it to work, and all of that good stuff. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. Let me just get into the depth of the content of this presentation, since sometimes the technology isn't always working that great. So one of the first things I just was going to throw up there, one of the important things to think about, even more so when you're presenting online than if you were presenting anywhere else, is to be planned yet flexible. And I really think this is just something that can be applied to a lot of scenarios, but I think especially online, you need to be as planned as possible, because you're going to have issues that are going to come up, and then you're going to have to be flexible. So trying to be planned is really important. And some of the things I was going to talk about today, or that you could apply this talk today to, are everything from the different types of presenting you could do. It could be a large streaming webinar like this one, which you're mainly just talking and you're streaming it out to people, so it's not as much interaction, but that's all you can do when you have a large group. And you are trying to use free technology. This would probably be best with multiple presenters. Like, there's several of us in the room right now, which is nice, so you can see different faces and see what's happening, and for shorter, quicker talks. But You could also be doing a small group webinar, which is good in Hangouts, one-shot instruction sessions, which a lot of times the software you're using is dependent on the instructor. Like if you're going in to teach a one-shot class, they might have different software according to what software they use on that campus or wherever. And then you might even be able to teach a semester-long course, and then you might be able to pick your tool depending on what's happening. But that's some of just the basics of the different kinds of ways you might be presenting. Oh no, I have another poll now that I'm not sure is going to work, so I'll just ask it of you. So this question was like, which one are you thinking about doing? And I assume, I'm just going to make the assumption that most of you are probably thinking about it just for like a little webinar, maybe through the TNT, the North Carolina Library Association TNT group or something like that. And if this was working and you were all voting, you could see like the different, according to what people chose, we would be able to see the results. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So practice and planning. Now, I can't say enough about the practicing or the planning, which involves practicing ahead of time. Now, despite what you might think, we actually practiced and planned and tried to work through the software before today. But you can see that even if you do that, you still sometimes have a lot of tech problems. I started doing a lot of this work, 6-7 years ago. I started doing a little bit of online work when I lived in Colorado, and I started exploring, it's something that you might want to do, I started exploring what free options were out there, playing around with whatever free software you could find, attending as many webinars as I could just to learn from the good and the bad, finding out what's available on my campus since I'm an academic librarian. UNCG uses Blackboard Collaborate, which used to be called Illuminate Live, if anyone remembers that. And just to get started, sometimes you just have to dive in like we're doing today. Like diving in, just kind of trying it out is the best way you're going to learn what works and what doesn't work. And not to give up and keep trying. So one of the best things to do is maybe find a small group of people that you know that want to play around with it a little bit and see what you can discover that way. So like, for example, what we did here in the library is we had a number of us that do instructional tech, and we just got together and kind of played around with it, and then we decided to start offering workshops through the Blackboard Collaborate room. Even though most of the people were physically here in the library or on campus, it's still forcing ourselves to do online webinars made us get to know it and get used to it. I also have like some informal groups of library friends that sometimes I get together with and to do, chats and stuff about the different topics or questions or whatever, and we decided just to play around with different software each time we meet. So there's a world of software out there, both paid for or free, so playing around with it is a really good way to get used to it. And last year on campus, since we're a Google campus, I started using Google Hangouts, just the Hangout part, not the on-air part, which the Hangout part's really easy, believe me. We started using that in order to just meet virtually, to just kind of get used to it. So I can't see enough that like just kind of forcing yourself to get into it will make you a little more comfortable. One of the important things to think about, though, is with the tech is there a certain browser that makes it work? So try it with different browsers, and always try it with your computer that you're planning to use for your presentation. Don't try to go somewhere else to practice it. Do it on that computer, because you don't want to get started and find out you didn't have the right Java downloaded or installed or app or something like that. So my next point was getting help and support. So you might possibly want to get moderators or co-presenters or tech support or things like that. Sometimes at the beginning, I often had a second person that we would be presenting together, or even a third. Sometimes that person would be the moderator, would help with any tech questions that might come up in chat or via email or something like that, while the other person was doing the actual talking. One other thing I wanted to mention, just stepping back to learning the technology, is that the other thing is, once you know what software you're using, just Google it, and you can find tutorials and help everywhere. I actually searched around for a lot of webinar trainings, like through Adobe and EduCalls and WebJunction or Blackboard, because we were Blackboard campus, ALA Tech Source, Info People trainings, and I watched some trainings and webinars on doing good webinars, so they were helpful as well. Because I think it's really important that if you get comfortable with it, it makes you feel more professional, but actually gives you confidence that you can do it, and you can learn the apps and the tools that this software can do to make it a little more interesting and engaging. So then let me move on to including other people. Some things to think about, including other presenters. You need to think about this stuff in planning as well, like organizing it with them. How familiar are they with the tech? Are you guys doing mutual slides? Are you handing it off? Like some of the same things you would do if you were presenting in person, but you have to make sure you kind of have it, you have the technology down and how you're going to be handing off beforehand. Like, can you have a separate moderator or like presenter chat that only you guys can see? How can you communicate with the other people without everyone hearing it? So sometimes that's kind of difficult, but in certain things, like we're a Blackboard Collaborate campus, we can have a moderator chat on the side so we can email back and forth about stuff without everyone in the room hearing. So some of those things are important to think about ahead of time, as well as like timing and practicing. When you have multiple presenters, it's really important to get the timing down. Other things to think about in planning are inviting people. Important thing would be, well, thinking about who's going to attend, how are they going to sign up? Do you use a Google form? Is it something automated through your campus? Is it through like a Google Plus Hangout that works so well today? Well, for some of you, you were able to get in. For some of you, weren't. But do you have like general tech help somewhere, like a web page or a LibGuide or something you can send them to ahead of time to test? When you're using a lot of softwares like, say, Blackboard Collaborate or Adobe Connect or WebEx, GoToMeeting, you might want to have a page where they can go ahead of time and click on something to test their system to see if it works, or make sure that the participants are prepared ahead of time, even though a lot of them might not be. I ask them to try to get a headset and mic because I think that works the best. It's kind of like what I'm using right now. You avoid feedback issues that could happen of the voice coming out of the speakers of your computer and going back in the mic, so a headset mic is really the best to avoid that. And webcams are a nice plus, but you don't often have to use those. Sometimes they are really bad for bandwidth. But also think about like things like how are you going to help these people when it happens? Like if they can't get in the room, but you're already teaching, how are they going to contact you? Which is kind of why it's nice to have another person or have your email open on the side or something. So as far as emailing them about the event, definitely a week to 3 days in advance is good so that they know what's happening, but an email the morning of is kind of good too, because people forget, and it's good to have that little reminder that this is happening that day. And I think that's what Kathy did with you all this morning. She let you know this morning about this webinar. And also the timing of it. Now, we waited a good 20 minutes before we got started today, but which is a little long, but sometimes starting just a couple minutes after the hour is good because people tend to join in at the hour, and if you start talking right away, it's kind of, they're missing the very beginning. So sometimes like waiting a few minutes is good. If you're doing things like we do a lot of tech tool talks here at UNCG for 30 minutes, and we tend to start those 15 minutes after the hour, and then we end 15 minutes before. And that's nice because it gives people plenty of time, especially if they're coming from a class, to get there and get logged in and take care of any tech problems before we actually start. And then if we run over, it's okay because we still have a few minutes before the hour ends, or if there's a lot of Q&As. So that's just a little idea. And then lastly, creating your agenda. I try to make it really detailed with talking points and timing and embedding where I'm going to have interactivities or engaging activities, and make sure you have a Q&A at the end. Sometimes it's hard to follow chat and this at the same time. So just a few tips for planning and practice. And now my next poll, which I know you probably can't see, but my next poll was asking you just open-ended question. How much time might it take you to plan a 30-minute webinar? It actually probably takes you, for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep talking, but if you have any thoughts, type it in the chat for those of you that are in here with me. If anyone's ever done instructional design, you know that it actually takes a lot longer than you think to plan any kind of instruction. Like Michelle said, hours. Like I probably spent 4 or 5 hours planning for the session, and it was actually content that I already kind of knew, but just organizing it and getting it ready and trying to get it to flow. And yet I'm still tweaking it as we go along because we ran out of a little bit of time by having some tech issues. So just know that you might need to, if you want to do a good job, spend more time on the planning process, just like you do with instructional design, because you want to think about all these different concepts and pedagogy and technology first before you just move on to jumping right in. So as the webinar starts, and these things differ totally depending on what kind of software that you're using. So it's really different for me in this Google Hangout stuff because I can't do as many of the little tools that I was using when I was doing Blackboard Collaborate and other kinds of software. But one of the best things to do is get in early and set up and test, like 15 minutes early, 30 minutes early. If it's a software where you can load your slides, get them loaded. Make sure your audio is working. All of those kind of things are really important. Another really important thing to do is close your unnecessary apps, as well as opening any important windows. And I say close apps because you don't want your Twitter to pop up or an IM chat to pop up in the middle of your webinar, especially if you're sharing your screen. So kind of think about what you can close and turn off, and then think about if there's anything you're going to show, have those open in multiple browser tabs. That way you're ready to go and you don't have to try to find what you're looking for at the time. Can you put up images of, let me see if I can show you this. A text slide, for example, like here's an example of the text slide I use in Blackboard Collaborate. I put this up at the very beginning. The last time I used it was in December when we did the TNT's favorite tools and trends. So this is an example of something you could do, cut and paste and create, so that it's up there when people are joining in and they can look at it and say, okay, I kind of know where things are. I know how I get started. Gives them something to look at while they're, when they're getting started. Whoops. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, guys. I hit the wrong key. Let's go back. Go back to my screen share. Okay. So, anyway, so the other thing to think about when you're opening is some things like the text slide example I gave you, but also like interactive welcomes are kind of nice too. So if when you're thinking about logging in, thinking about people joining you, you might want to do something like this generic map I have there and put like a map up on the screen and say, as people are joining in, just put a little icon on the screen where you're coming from. Like for us, it might just be North Carolina, but sometimes we're doing like national webinars and things like that too. And, oh great, I'm seeing some chat messages too. This is wonderful. Some people are chatting with me. That's great, like talking about shutting down stuff, like professional sales presentations with emails popping up the whole time. That's a good point too. If you have email that like is automatically popping up, you might want to shut that down or, minimize the pop-ups because those things can be really distracting for your users. So let's see, other interactive things that you can do. You could do, one thing I do is people are starting to join in is say welcome them, like as you see people pop in, and maybe if they're saying where they're coming from, you can even, or their name, you can say, hey, Jenny, it's so good to see you here, or oh, it looks like you're coming from UNC Charlotte, or something like that. You can also type it in the chat if you have chat, because sometimes people's audio doesn't work right away and you might be talking and they're not hearing you. So sometimes at the beginning, do it both in chat as well as saying it out loud, because that might really help if anyone's not listening. You can also have a slide, if you have certain software, allows you to put slides up at the beginning that'll say something like, the webinar will be starting in a few minutes. I usually use a text slide kind of for that reason. But then when you're getting ready to start, you can go ahead, if you're using software where you need to hit record, I usually hit record then, and I always have it really big on my screen, like make sure you hit record, because sometimes it doesn't automatically record it. And let's see. Though using a webcam is nice because you can see people, but it takes so much bandwidth that sometimes it's just not really worth it. So just keep that in mind. If you don't use a webcam, then maybe just have your picture, if you're the presenter, on the first slide so people know you're like a real person and not just some person talking at their computer. I think having that kind of personal edge is really important too. And also mentioning to the audience how it's going to flow. Like I'm going to be stopping and asking you questions, there's going to be polling and things like that so that they're kind of aware of what's happening. So I would normally take a break now and kind of answer for some questions, but due to the sake of the time, I think I'm just going to kind of roll on a little bit. But please feel free to type anything in the chat or, IM me or whatever else on the Google page and I'll too if you want. So, interactivity and engagement, and this, as well as the planning and the preparing ahead of time and thinking about welcoming people as they're coming in and that sort of thing, that's also interactive and engaging. I think it's really important. Most people say webinars and things are really boring. So ways to make it not as boring is to try to make it engaging. So I kind of have a 5-minute rule that I usually stick by, and that's don't go more than 5 minutes without something engaging. So whether you're going to do a poll, like even just yes and no, you can do this really easily sometimes. In our Blackboard Collaborate, we have just a green check and red X little box for yes and no. And I'll use that even more frequently than 5 minutes to say, all right, everyone can still hear me? Is everyone seeing my page? That sort of thing is really easy to do, but keeps them knowing that you're remembering that they're there, and that keeps participants a little more engaged. Multiple choice questions are great too. What I was trying to do with the poll everywhere was to do these poll questions so that we could have more engagement, but it doesn't seem to work that well in the Google Hangout room. But if you're using a PowerPoint slide, you can simply have a slide that just has A, B, C, D with the poll question at the top, and then you can have people answer it. In a lot of software like Blackboard Collaborate, you can actually have a poll like A, B, C, D as a drop-down poll choice for them so they can pick it that way, and then you can show the results on the screen. And I know you can do that in other softwares too. Some of them allow you to do questions and then integrate it in there too. So find out what software you're using and what kind of options that you have, and if there's a way to do multiple choice questions. In this case, I could have just done an A, B, C, D as a slide and then had you all type in the chat. Those of you that are in the physical room the virtual Google Hangout room and not watching on air would be able to answer. You could also sometimes just ask questions, maybe more high-level questions that require them to think a little more and answer that in the chat. Or ask multiple questions in a row, like a first question and another one that kind of stems from that. So that's why planning ahead is good, because think about what kind of questions you could ask to make it more engaging. In Google Hangouts, you can actually share Google Drive. So I'm not going to click on it now because it'll be kind of crazy, but because it takes a little bit sometimes slow for people to see it, but you can click on the Google Drive app in Google Hangouts, and then it's especially good if you were having like a meeting. You could actually share the Google Drive with everybody that's in here, and everyone can see it and everyone can be adding to it, so that could be used with a class or with a small group or something like that. It's a great feature. If you have the opportunity to divide people in little groups, like in certain softwares, you can put them in little breakout rooms. That's a great way to get them to go do something and then come back and share with the large group. As a moderator, you can go into breakout rooms and see what they're doing. You can take a snapshot of the whiteboard if they're sharing stuff on the whiteboard. That's usually like the main screen in the center. And then they can come back as a large group and share. In Google Hangouts, where we are now, you can actually let other people share their screen. I clicked on the little icon to share my screen, but anyone in here could share their screen. So that's another way to kind of make it more engaging. So some things just to think about in your questions is creating try to think of like real issues or real problems or case study kind of questions, something that's a little more engaging depending on what your topic is, to get people to think. The other thing, think TV, though I don't know how many people watch TV anymore, but there's like in television, they're in a lot of like sitcoms and stuff, especially, or dramas, they're changing the scene or the angle or the voice every 20 to 30 seconds. So think about that. Like, you really are probably already getting bored listening to me ramble about this for so long. So this might have been a better presentation if I had all of you talk about different things and get more people in here, and then you could, other people would be saying something. I'm changing the screen, which could be changing my slide or something like that. So just thinking about like mixing it up as quickly as possible, because it's online. You need to keep their attention. So multiple voices are really important. Trying to have more people speak than one is key. And also visuals. Trying to include visuals on your slides and things like that will be more engaging for people too. Multimedia is great, but sometimes multimedia can be really a problem. In Collaborate, we have a lot of problems with multimedia, but here in like Google Hangouts, you can actually go right to YouTube and share stuff, and it seems like it might be a little bit easier for people to use. So here is my next poll that's not going to show on the screen. But this was just, can you think of other ways to be interactive when you're doing something online? So if you think of anything, post it on the site or in the chat or IM me. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next one. A couple more things to think about here, webcam tips, what to avoid, and then we're going to kind of wrap up and do Q&A. So webcam tips. I'm going to take a quick second and go back to me. Oops, there we go. Okay, so right now I can like stare at the camera, or I can stare at the screen, or I can read my notes. But if people are looking at you, you need to think about like what you're focusing on the screen. So I'm looking around a whole lot, and that can be really annoying. I'm going to go back to my screen so that you can see what I'm showing, what I'm talking about. Oops, that's not the right one. Try this again, screen share. Here we go. So one idea I heard, a tip from somebody was, a lot of times when you're in things like Google Hangouts, you're looking at your picture of yourself on the screen, or you're reading something else if you have multiple slides, things that you're looking at. Somebody said to put a mirror right behind your camera, and then you can see what you look like. You're looking toward yourself, because people just tend to look at themselves, but you're looking at the camera. So that was just a neat little tip to think about. Also, I know people that like to stand and teach. I mean, it's hard for me to sit too, but I'm connected. My wire to my headset is a little too short to move around too much. But you can try it. I've seen a webinar where the person was walking around and talking. You have to practice it ahead of time, make sure your camera's on you, and most important thing is don't move around too much, because it's slower coming through, and people are going to get dizzy looking at you move, especially if it's coming through really slowly. Something else I read somewhere, and to be honest, I don't remember where I saw this. I've seen this in a couple webinars before, but the idea of this word blink, which is to think about the background, lighting, in position, natural, and keep focused. So kind of what I mean by that is like thinking about what's what's in the what's going on in your background. So if I stop screen sharing, you can see my camera. So what's going on behind me? Like, do I have something distracting? Do I have like a whole bunch of important notes I don't want anyone to see here? I might not have the best background right now, but it's just something to think about. What's the lighting like? I do have a window behind me, but it doesn't seem to come in and make it too glaring on my screen. And what position am I sitting in? I have two screens, so my webcam only reaches to the one screen. I can't move it over to the other one because the cord's not long enough. So is that something that maybe I should rethink? And also just trying to be more natural. Try to do it enough that you're comfortable and you're not trying to be too uptight or nervous, just kind of relax a little and be natural, and people will engage a little bit more that way. And also keeping focus. Try not to, if people are watching you, try not to be distracted or roll your eyes or something like that very much. Let's go back to my screen. Okay. So that was a couple questions, a couple tips to think about. And then a couple things to avoid that I wanted to throw out there are just one talking head, presentation style. Try to see what you can do to add more presenters or some more sharing things or more engaging. All of that stuff is important. And not allowing participants to chat with each other or to share other information or things like that. I think that's something you want to avoid. Like if they want to talk, if they're doing little side chats, things like that, I mean, that's okay. It means that they're engaging and they're thinking about it and they're talking about it. If there's a way to bring that chat into the whole group chat, do it. Also, boring PowerPoint bullet slides with no visuals, especially want to try to make it more engaging. I'm not sure my visuals were all that great, but I did try to use some color and try to use some fun images when I could, just to make it a little more engaging. And let's see what I have after this. And then the last thing to think about when you're done with the webinar, following up is important to do quickly. So if you can, because people are thinking about it now, they might have missed some stuff, they might want to, you know, follow up on something. So if you can send out the recording, the slides, any links within 24 hours, you'll get those people back again. And also those are people that you could invite to your next webinar. So have another one lined up and then you're good to go. And then this last poll is just asking you to think about, after attending this session, what will you do? And if anyone wants to type anything, those answers will appear here. But I'm going to stop talking right now and see if there's any questions or anything else. Let's get to my next slide. I really don't have that many resources to share. These were a couple things that I had looked at that were kind of good, but a lot of it's just been my experience over the past 6 or so years of doing online stuff that I've just picked up on little things here and there. So let me go back to not screen share so that I can see if there are any questions. I'm going to go to the Google Plus page and see if Jenny says there's any questions.
We haven't been able to figure out which event page is working. Honestly, there's like 3 different event pages, and we don't know. None of them have all of the people that have participated on them. So
we might just have to try this again, like, you know, for fun sometime, a bunch of us, and just see how we can get it to work. But thanks for anyone that happened to see me and happened to hear it, and I hope it was useful. And if I'm live somewhere out there streaming, hopefully you learned a little bit and you're not too scared off of Google Hangouts on air, because it's definitely a new experience.
Yes, it is. Thanks so much, Beth.
Sure. We can hold out for a few minutes and see if there's any questions coming from anywhere, but probably not.
It was streaming on one page because Melanie was watching it.
Cool. Yeah, I was getting some chats from her. Yeah, I'm curious which page. All right. One new message. And I'll definitely post my slides to SlideShare, and then you can all take a look at them afterwards.
That's great. And we should have a recording of this. We'll have to edit out the first part.
Yeah, I know. I'll have to figure out how it happens. I think it's just on YouTube, and we'll see. All right. Well, maybe I'll stop the live broadcast and we'll see what's going on.
Melanie said she posted